Hi, my name is Chris Brennan, and this is your horoscope for Aries and Aries rising for January of 2019. Joining me today is Cam White of whitelightastrology.com. Hey, Cam.
Hey, Chris.
And we're going to be going over your transits for the month of January for the next few weeks. We got a lot of stuff. January is a big month. It's actually an explosive month. I've heard some people describe it as like 2019 encapsulated into one month. Would you agree with that assessment?
Yeah, I think January is just going to really push everything off, like get everything start with the new year. Because I mean, 2019's got some things going on, but I feel like January is just a good push and a good like, hey, new year, new me, New Year's resolutions. Let's get them done.
Definitely. And what's funny about this, we're starting with Aries for our recording, but for no sign is that more true than for Aries and Aries rising because the ruling planet of Aries, Mars, returns to Aries right at the start of the month.
Yeah, so I mean, Aries have had Mars in Pisces in their 12th house, which is just not that's not what Aries want. They want Mars in a really strong sign since you guys are so Mars ruled. And as Mars goes into your first house in Aries, and that's like the night of the 31st, right? Going into the morning of the 1st of January.
Right. It's like New Year's Eve, and then like right away it's in.
Yeah, supercharging your first house. Like Mars is entering his domicile. I mean, he's been in Pisces and Aquarius forever, where he's not like he's bad, but he's also not that good.
Yeah, I mean it's just more of a slower, more introspective, more reserved sort of placement for Mars to be transiting through the 12th, and then suddenly it's in the first, which primarily is associated with both the body and the mind and spirit of the individual. And it can just be very sort of energizing or rejuvenating type of energy.
Yeah, and especially with Mars too, where I mean, I know like the whole idea with Aries Sun and Aries Rising has a lot more, positively charged energy, a lot more drive and ambition. And I think as Mars goes into Aries, into that first house area, that's going to come a lot more alive, and you're going to feel that energy kind of come back alive again.
Definitely. So here's the transit chart. I forgot to throw this up for people that we're looking at on the monitor over here. But right here over on the left, we see Mars going into Aries. So yeah, this transit's lasting all month, and it's even going to lead over a little bit into February. It can be a little bit tricky. Like we're talking about the positive sides, which is like additional energy and rejuvenation and just like drive suddenly after a long period of like 6 weeks of Mars being in Pisces. The downside can sometimes be like greater tendency towards irritability, sort of, and some of the things that come out of that. So you kind of want to watch your temper and things like that this month. Try to avoid doing things too impulsively that you might regret later.
Yeah, exactly. Like I mean, Mars over your ascendant is just kind of like dealing with some anger, dealing with frustrations. It could be really easy to get caught up in that. And but I just think of the overall feeling of Mars being in Aries, it's that the energy to actually change that. You may get a little bit frustrated, maybe a little bit angry, but as long as that's just channeled, I mean, this is Mars and Aries, go work out, go, throw something, go exert energy. And that usually leaves the frustration and things like that you can experience with that.
Sure, definitely. In terms of like ways to channel that excess of energy in a positive or constructive direction.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. All right, so that's the start of the month. What else do we have going on that we want to talk about at the beginning of the month? I guess really early on, right away we get Mercury moving into Capricorn, into the 10th house of those with Aries and rising, the place of career, social standing, and your overall life direction. And then immediately the next day we have the first major astrological alignment of 2019, which is a solar eclipse in Capricorn, also in the 10th house of career for those with Aries rising.
Yeah, definitely. And I just think having all of that happen on that weekend, on that Friday and that Saturday, having Mercury get out of Sagittarius, where it's a little bit overwhelmed, it's in your 9th house, easy to daydream, easy to get caught up. And as Mercury goes into 10th house and, it's solidifying itself in Capricorn and it's about to get really serious, along with that eclipse, I just feel like the 10th house is basically, it's going to go from Mars being in Aries, your first house is really activated, to boom, let's focus on the 10th house. Everything is going to become very much, I don't want to say solidified, because we have, the eclipses. This is an eclipse in South Node. This is more of kind of, it's a new moon, basically. All of the attention's right there. You have both the luminaries focusing on one spot of your chart. And with this being in Capricorn, with Mercury wanting to be in Capricorn, I think a lot of this has to do with structures, has a lot to do with framework, has a lot to do with, I've been using the word concentration lately, especially because of that South Node stuff.
Yeah.
So I really just think that this is just going to be a concentration and focus on that, that 10th house of, career, public vocation, public eye, could even be like your boss sometimes.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me because this is coming on the heels of we've now had one full year of Saturn in Capricorn. going through the 10th house for those with Aries rising, and some of the sometimes challenges that raises, or sometimes setbacks in terms of career, but sometimes it's the what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, or it's like the surmountable difficulties of like, yeah, you've run into a roadblock, but you overcome it and you become a better person as a result of that in some instances. And so now that we're a year into that, and a lot of people last month shared a lot of great stories with us in the comments section. That was like our homework assignment, was tell us what your experience of Saturn and Capricorn has been so far. And we got a lot of great stories in the comments section. But I feel like this eclipse, this is the first of the eclipse series in Capricorn, is really going to ignite and set off for a lot of people what that entire 3-year transit of Saturn through the 10th house is really all about, in a way that maybe it hasn't been as clear up till now. But now that we have these eclipses, a lot of that stuff's going to start becoming a lot more concrete.
Yeah, it's going to become a lot more real. Like
Sure.
the eclipses make everything like real for whatever reason.
Right.
But I really just think that these eclipses, it's kind of like I was making this analogy of when you have a bad day and you got to go to work, you don't go into work with that energy that you had during that day. Like in the 10th house with all this Capricorn stuff, it's kind of like whatever needs to be focused on or addressed, or really whatever's going on in that area, it needs to be, looked at in a professional manner. It needs to be taken with some discipline, with some hard work. And it's not necessarily something where you want to just let it kind of hit you and let it kind of, overtake you. You want to handle things like in a professional manner, kind of like how you would handle someone at work, or handle someone, where you don't really want to get super emotionally involved. And I think this new moon in Cancer with Mercury going to, not this new moon in Cancer, new moon in Capricorn,
right.
And with Mercury going to Capricorn, I really think this is just going to be the time to reset that energy, refocus that energy on a more serious, more professional attitude towards addressing those, Saturn and Capricorn things, where it's both, establishing something and also, feeling like things are falling apart.
Right. Yeah. I mean, so Saturn and Capricorn, and since this is a solar eclipse, of course, it's a new moon, but it's like a supercharged new moon, because solar eclipses have effects that last at least for the next 6 months. And I always interpret a new moon as like setting the seeds of the foundation for something that's going to grow and develop over the next 6 months. But that's even more the case here with this solar eclipse in Capricorn.
Definitely.
Is whatever you're starting or initiating in your life now, or especially in your career, try to initiate something constructive that you might not see immediate results, but in the long term, especially over the course of the next 6 months or so, eventually it will grow and develop until eventually we'll have a lunar eclipse, which is a full moon around mid 2019. And you'll start to see some of the results or the outcomes of what you initiate here in January.
Yeah, and it's gonna, like, the eclipses in June and July looks just as serious, if not more serious. So these, like, the seeds that you plant right now are definitely going to come to fruition, or something's going to happen with them by the next 6 months. So definitely, whatever you're focusing on now, give it 6 months. Don't just give it the first 30 days of January.
Right. So that's not the only thing. Surprisingly, we could spend the entire time talking about that, but that's not the only thing happening this month. Immediately after that solar eclipse, weirdly, Uranus actually stations direct in Aries for the final time, which is notable, especially for those with Aries rising, because this is the very last Uranus direct station that's going to take place in Aries. I don't want to say this century, because I think we might get one at the very end, like 80 something years from now. But yeah, Uranus has been going through Aries and making some radical changes and sometimes unexpected changes in the lives of those with Aries prominent in their chart over the course of most of the past decades, since, what was it, 2010, 2011?
Yeah, March of 2011, I think, is when Uranus went in there.
Okay, so that was the opening of that transit, and now we're in the final, like, wind down stage, and there's one last little hurrah, or one last little reminder for many of you of what that was all about, and what some of the radical changes were that occurred for you over the course of the past decade in whatever area of your chart that this falls. So if you have Aries rising, for many of you, that's going to be things related to first house matters, like the body, the mind, your personality, sometimes your appearance, character traits, and things like that.
Yeah, and I just think Uranus being over the ascendant, like, that's a good place to put in the breakdown leads to breakthrough. Uranus is kind of like right on top of your ascendant, right of the way that you look at things, the lens that you view in the world. That's kind of like, oh, all of a sudden I'm feeling ready to jump out and do this. This is also Aries, where it's very much like go, 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 do. And in that first house, where that's has a lot to do with your personality, has a lot to do with your sense of self. I think if you're needing like some type of, if you've felt stagnant or still, I feel like Uranus going direct is going to give you that little push forward, that little oomph of like, all right, yeah, you could still, do this, or an opportunity might, present itself to you, or, it's also Uranus. It's up and downs, and it's extremely unpredictable. So Uranus being your first house can make it feel like, ooh, like things are going down really fast versus things are going really up really fast. But as it goes direct, and this is his last time going direct before it goes into Taurus, I do think this is just one last final kaboom to kind of leap you forward and give you the energy you need, especially with Mars being in Aries too this whole time.
Yeah, definitely. It's really curious how much cardinal energy is going on this month with, you know, Mars going into Aries. We have Saturn, of course, is already there, and Pluto is, of course, already there. It's been there for a while, but we've got that solar eclipse up in Capricorn in the 10th. Mercury and the Sun are going through Capricorn, Uranus stationing direct in Aries. It's just a very dynamic month, which is probably going to be even more dynamic for those who have those signs of the zodiac angular, which includes like Aries rising, Capricorn, Cancer, and Libra rising.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, yeah, Uranus, I had Uranus go through my first like a long time ago. And actually, when it hit my descendant, that was when I discovered astrology. And that was like a really radical change. That was my finding astrology transit.
Yeah, well, I mean, isn't the modern thing Uranus is astrology now?
Yeah. I mean, a
Yeah.
lot of modern contemporary astrologers associate Uranus with astrology. And it was definitely it was a big shakeup in my like worldview and unexpected like trajectory change in my life up to that point, suddenly being on one lane and then suddenly going down this other different, very weird one. And I think that's a good encapsulation of what Uranus transits can be about sometimes.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. I feel that. But the next big thing though, Venus goes into Sagittarius the next day. What is that? December
7th.
7th. December 7th, Venus will go into Sagittarius. That's going into your ninth house. And we should just, be so thankful that Venus is not in Scorpio and not in your eighth house.
All right. It's been like months now. So Venus has been going through Scorpio for months, the place of like shared resources, other people's money. What are some other eighth house?
I like using the eighth house for like fears, anxieties. It's definitely like it's kind of like growing pains. Like there's challenges and there's changes you have to make, and it's just super uncomfortable. Regardless of the eighth house sucks. Like it's not really the best house in the world, and especially having Venus there, a planet we all want to be happy. And she's also she's in her detriment. She doesn't like to be in Scorpio, and she's in the eighth house where this is just amplified in a very drastic way. I just think that mucky gunkiness finally getting out of that place in your chart and Venus going into Sag is just going to feel like a big bath. Like,
Sure.
I mean, especially because I have a lot of fire in my chart, so I relate to like,
Right.
Aries risings and stuff. And it's like, we have fire coming again. Like we're going to start to feel good again. Venus being in Scorpio was a little bit rough, but as Venus goes into your ninth house too, like the ninth house is a really fun place. This is like, higher education. This is, exploring, far distance travel and things like that.
Right. Expanding your horizons in all sorts of different ways, both like intellectually and sometimes physically or literally by going different places or meeting different people.
Mm-hmm.
And what's exciting about that as well is that Venus, of course, is catching up in that sign with Jupiter there. And this is going to accentuate that recent Jupiter transit that started just a few months ago of Jupiter going into Sag and that year-long period of like growth and expansion in the context of the ninth house that I talked about in previous months' horoscopes, I think last month's. But Venus actually catches up and actually conjoins Jupiter at some point later in the month, right?
Yeah. And I think that's just kind of like a super awesome planetary high five. Venus wants to party with Jupiter, and Jupiter's got the best house party because he's in his own home. So Venus is being welcomed with open arms by Jupiter.
Let me figure out what the date is. So I'm throwing up the solar fire chart if you guys can see it on the video version of this horoscope.
It's at like 15 and 16.
Yeah, it looks like Venus catches up to Jupiter at about 15 or 16 Sagittarius on about January 21st or 22nd.
Yeah, and I think the whole Venus and Jupiter transit being in this ninth house for you guys, for Aries, I think this is just really about finding that value and exploring a lot more of those ninth house topics. Like Jupiter's right there. It's wanting to expand. It's wanting to, bring more awareness, show you what else is there. And I think Venus is just adding a lot more value to this, making you kind of look at like, oh, this is really nice. I do like this. And this is Sagittarius, where it's about, exploring, adventurism, learning and discovering. And with this being in that ninth house of, higher education, foreign things, like I know it rules, publishing and stuff like that. I think this is just going to be a big time to really discover more of what your beliefs are, discover more of, maybe you want to learn something new from somewhere else or from, some other culture, anything like that. I just think this is going to be an exciting time to discover and learn. and you're going to feel that energy kind of like, especially with Mars in Aries, trining it for the most part throughout the month. I think it's just going to be an exciting time to put yourself out there and to really, or I should say apply yourself a little bit more, but as you do it, learn on the way and learn, what more possibilities you kind of have.
Right. Definitely like the starting to learn something new and becoming familiar again with what it's like to really fall in love with learning a new topic
Ooh,
that you didn't
yes.
know before, I think would be a good keyword for me for Aries rising this month. Especially, I think the people with night charts are really going to feel that Venus transit and that Venus conjunction with Jupiter very strongly, because for a lot of the day chart people, it's like Jupiter is the most positive planet for them, and they're going to be feeling that Jupiter transit through their ninth all year. This is when the night chart people really, it gets balanced out, is the night chart people are really going to experience this Venus transit through Sagittarius over the course of the next month or so, and especially that conjunction with Jupiter as being a much more subjectively positive experience in that specific domain of their life for a few weeks, and so the tables kind of get evened out in that way.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think it's going to be amazing, like regardless.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely my favorite transit. So I think we're agreed that's the best transit this month, is that Venus Jupiter conjunction around the 21st, 22nd.
Definitely.
Okay.
And then, well, I mean, we kind of skipped ahead, but that was Venus moving into Sag. And then, what, a week later, we have Jupiter square Neptune on the 13th?
Yeah, so that's the other major outer planet transit that's happening this month, is Jupiter going through Sagittarius, of course. It's moving pretty fast at this point, and it catches up to and it squares Neptune in mid Pisces on the 13th of the month. So that's kind of like a broad, sort of mundane transit that everybody's going to be experiencing, is the Jupiter square Neptune. And it's partially going to depend on if that's actually hitting anything closely in your actual natal chart. But how did you or how did you relate that to the Aries rising people?
Um, it's funny. I didn't talk too much about the Jupiter Neptune square, but I do think it is going to be really big for the Aries rising people, because you may have something in Pisces, you may not, whatever, but Neptune's in Pisces in your 12th house, and the 9th house and the 12th house are not necessarily similar, but share common themes. And I think with Neptune being in your 12th house, where the 12th house is about, unacknowledged or suppressed parts of yourself, things that are hidden, things that you don't always see. And Neptune is blurring the lines and the edges right there. I think Jupiter and Sagittarius, where he's in your 9th house, wanting to discover, wanting to grow, wanting to question, wanting to believe, hitting that square with Neptune is going to kind of unlock like maybe some things, some questions that you may not have asked yourself before. Like what you said earlier, like rediscovering the love to learn something new. I mean, we're also going to have Venus square Neptune in the midst of this too, but as Jupiter squares Neptune, I think this is just going to open up a broad range of topics for you to learn and discover, especially with Neptune being in that 12th house of like hidden things, suppressed things. Maybe you didn't know you liked this new thing. Maybe you discovered something that you liked that you never thought you would enjoy before. I think that's kind of like the energy and the theme right here. So it's kind of like doing something new, going out of your way may lead you to find and enjoy something you never thought you liked.
Right. I would definitely, Neptune always has this like mysterious and sort of otherworldly vibe. And sometimes when it connects with other planets, it can either make the planet, especially when we're talking about Jupiter going through the ninth within the context of education or like learning something or changing and expanding your beliefs, there's sometimes that can attract people to more metaphysical type things or sort of otherworldly, sort of mystical type things. Other times you have to be careful, because sometimes it can indicate a situation where you get really into something, but it's kind of the details surrounding it are murky, and maybe after the fact, it turns out that it's not quite what it was cracked up to be when you're right in the middle of it. Sometimes that's something you have to be a little careful about.
Yeah, that's Neptune. It's super dualistic. So, I mean, it could be like, discovering something you thought you wouldn't like and you actually like it, versus also discovering something, wanting to get into something and learning it's maybe not what it is that you want. Maybe it's not, and that's the thing with Neptune. It's dualistic of either, hey, this is really cool and awesome, or it's kind of whack.
Right. But sometimes it's like when you're in the middle of that, you're not going to be able to get very much perspective. So maybe just keep that in mind, especially in terms of if you're trying to commit to some long-term thing, get some outside perspectives from other people, get some advice from friends or other people who can give you advice on that, maybe before doing anything too drastic.
Yeah, all that glitters is not always gold. And I think that's
Sure.
a big thing with Jupiter and Neptune squaring.
Definitely. All right. So that's the middle of the month. That's our transit that's happening. Now we start getting into the third quarter of the month, where, of course, we get the annual ingress of the sun into Aquarius on the 20th. And then immediately after that, we have our other major lunation this month, which is a full moon, which is actually close enough to the nodes that it's a lunar eclipse.
It's a total lunar eclipse.
It's a total lunar eclipse. Okay,
Mhm.
so this is a big one on the 21st of January, 2019. We've got, and this is actually interesting because this is the last of the eclipse series in the Leo Aquarius axis that's been bouncing back and forth over the past few years, right?
Mhm.
So this is actually bringing to completion or to culmination something that's been happening in your life. And since it's happening in Leo, it's especially probably related to your fifth house. So what are some good fifth house topics that might be relevant here?
Well, I mean, like, if we're going to be real, the fifth house is all about fun.
Mhm.
And like Leo rules that spot too. So I think, and if you're either an Aries sun or Aries rising, I think this is just a very positive and happy place in your chart to begin with.
Mhm.
But I mean, the fifth house is related to, kids, art, music, whatever your hobbies or creation is, something that you like to invest your time and want into.
Mhm.
I just think this full moon is kind of like that one last, like, all right, what is it that you're really wanting out of all of this? With Mars going into Aries, you're doing more, your Saturn's in Capricorn, like you're achieving more, you're learning more. And I think this full moon, this eclipse in Leo is kind of bringing to end of like being clear about what it is that you do want, what it is that you do want to create, or what it is that you are feeling like you do want to express, that you do want to put yourself out there and do, I guess is a good way to put it.
Yeah, definitely. And probably bringing to completion something. This isn't probably something new that you're just initiating now, but it's probably bringing to completion something that was initiated previously, especially potentially 6 months earlier during one of the last Leo solar eclipses, which would have been the opening of a 6 month phase. And now we have the closing of that phase here in your fifth house. So for some of you that have children or where children are important in your life, it could be some sort of culmination of events with respect to that, which was initiated previously. And sometimes that has to do with like decisions about children or having children or working with children. Other times it can be, if the person is older, like something significant coming to completion or some sort of culmination in your children's lives if they're a little bit older and they're off doing things. Because sometimes the chart, really weirdly, it doesn't always just represent different parts of us and our psyche, but sometimes it literally represents things going on in the lives of people around us who are close to us in our lives.
Yeah, astrology isn't always about you sometimes.
Yeah, it's really not, which is bizarre because it's your birth chart theoretically, and it was cast for the moment of your birth, but it really does sometimes represent the other people in your life that are crucial to your life and reflecting things that are happening to them, which sometimes relates to you and other times doesn't, but just by virtue of them being important people in your life, it does have some bearing on, and it does sometimes show up in your chart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree.
All right, so that is the final eclipse of that series of the Leo, and then we're completely finished with the Leo Aquarius eclipse series as we move more firmly into the Capricorn Cancer eclipse series over the next year. After that, we've got Mercury going into Aquarius on the 24th. So that is, of course, into the 11th house of those with Aries rising. So that's your house of friends and alliances and groups, and it can bring a period of greater activity and greater communication with friends. What else do we got towards the end of the month? It looks like eventually there's the Sun-Mercury conjunction in Aquarius on the 29th.
And I was making the note of this, is that this is at like 8 degrees Aquarius. So it's really close to where that Mars station was. And I do think that's going to bring a little bit more of clarity around that area. Like kind of like delayed things from coming back from, this past summer of 2018. And going into 2019, I feel like that's going to bring some clarity, bring some, ideas, some communication, some, whatever was going on for you in that area. Because I mean, Mars spent a lot of time in that area.
Right.
So I feel like the Sun-Mercury conjunction pretty much next to that degree is going to give some clear ideas and connections.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. And it's kind of nice because that Mars transit through this 11th for some people led to some tension in like the area of friendships or groups or alliances. But now with the Sun and Mercury moving through there and forming that conjunction, this could be perhaps reestablishing communication or opening the lines of communication where they may have been cut off previously and trying to reform some of those connections if it's time to do so.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, and this thing is with the 11th house too, is that there, if you're Aries rising, your midheaven could be right here too. So friends, alliances, networks, big groups of people, community. But with the midheaven right there, it could also have some stuff to do with your career and stuff in the workplace.
Right. All right. I think that brings us pretty much towards the end of the month. Is there anything else major that you wanted to mention that we forgot to mention before we start to wrap up?
I think besides what day does Mercury hit Saturn? Because Mercury does conjoin Saturn, and I think that's going to play a big role because that's right before the eclipse, or I mean, right after the eclipse, but before the Leo eclipse. But I do think the Mercury-Saturn conjunction is going to really speak volumes of the Saturn and Capricorn in your 10th house thing going on.
It looks like that's like January 12th or 13th.
Yeah, January 12th or 13th. Yeah, same day as like the Jupiter-Neptune square. I think Mercury being on top of Saturn's, like just going to project out a lot of that Saturn stuff of, both limitations and walls and boundaries, but also, where you need to be disciplined, where to address things, where do you need to put more structure around, whatever it is that you got going on in your 10th house. I just think that Mercury Saturn thing is going to be really loud. Even though it's Capricorn, which I was making the joke in one of my videos, but it's like Saturn sending a fax to everybody through Mercury.
Right.
And that fax is definitely going to be pretty real.
Okay.
You know what I mean? It's Saturn in Capricorn. He's out of shadow. The sun already hit Saturn. He's fresh and ready to give you challenges and obstacles.
Yeah, that's really amplifying some of those 10th house career, overall life direction, figuring stuff out and laying a plan for the next like 6 months or couple of years with Mercury hitting Saturn right then, right around the same time that Jupiter's squaring Neptune.
Mm-hmm.
Brilliant. All right. Well, I think that's starting to bring us towards the end of this. Thanks a lot for joining me today. This was awesome.
Thank you for having me. This is amazing.
Yeah. This is our first time doing it. It's the first horoscope we're recording, of course, since this is Aries. We're going to switch it up a little bit as we go through the rest. So one thing I wanted to mention before we wrap up, I just launched a new set of posters for the Astrology of 2019. It shows all of the artwork that we're using here in this horoscope video, but you can actually see it for the entire year, and it shows all of the transits, all the ingresses, all the retrogrades, and everything else for the next 12 months. So you can find out more information about that at theastrologypodcast.com /2019 posters, and you can order a set and I'll ship it out to you. We will literally pack a set ourselves and ship it out to you, and it will have our fingerprints on it today. All right. So thanks a lot. Where can people find out? You also have your own YouTube channel.
Yeah, I have a YouTube at White Light Astrology, Twitter at White Light Cam. If you want to visit my website, that's whitelightastrology.com. And you can probably find the rest of my links or whatever through one of those. But yeah, I'm posting my January horoscopes too. So if you want to check out my own personal ones, check out my YouTube at White Light Astrology.
Definitely. And I'll put links in the description below this video for those watching this on YouTube. So thanks a lot for joining me.
Yeah, thank you.
And thanks everybody for watching. Good luck, and we'll see you again in January.